Dear Harstem, Terran are imbalanced like hell. First of all, I gotta say that I suck. I know that. I have no real build order, my macro and micro are bad, and often I don't know what to do in situations. But besides of that, Terran are just stupidly overpowered, and every idiot can play them. For example, in my replay I denied his natural base for a really long amount of time. I even had my third up at the time he started his natural mining, but because of mules he had more income than me with 2.5 bases up. Then I attack... 2 shots of a single tank, which cost only a bit more than 1 stalker, kill my whole army. When I focus on the tank, the marines/marauders kill my whole army in 2 seconds. I must admit my opponent did a lot of harassment, which I had to go back every time and clear it up. That's not the problem itself. The problem is that Terran has all these units where you only need to build 1, and it does massive damage to the enemy. 1 mine in the mineral line is game almost over. 1 raven is an infinite amount of stupid turrets and even vision. 1 ghost is EMP, kills whole army shields. 1 tank is massive splash damage to everything, plus stupid range. 1 liberator is you need stalkers and blink to effectively kill it without losing your mineral line or army when in combination with a tank. The list goes on and on, but I think you get my problem. So please, Harstem, give me advice how I can win against those ugly guys with my shiny force of aliens. Name Solari, race Protoss, League Platinum, and the server is Europe. All right, we got our game, a PvT, which is going to be played here on Glittering Ashes between 2 players that scout. Well, the TOS scouts after his first pylon and the Terran scouts after his first deep. Actually, he has 2 SCVs out on the map already. I'm not quite sure what these SCVs are for. I've seen single SCV scouts for eBay blocks, but like this, I haven't quite seen it. Cool to see that there's still some innovation happening at the platinum level here. This probe is going to get chased all the way back to the base and a full wall at the same time as well. Is there a gas? Yeah, okay, there's a gas, only mining 2 in it. Very interesting build out of the Terran so far. At the same time, we see the Protoss player has a gateway on the low ground. So he spots the eBay block immediately. Now the correct response here is to pull 4 workers and start attacking this eBay. Well, 1 worker attacks the SCV, make sure he can't continue building it. The other probes immediately start attacking the eBay. That doesn't quite seem to be the response here. A second pylon went down before anything. Cybernetic score starts, well, 12 seconds late. Usually the timing for a cybernetic score is 124 with a regular 14 pylon, 16 gate. This cybernetic score went down, I think at 138 it was, 136, 137, somewhere around that time. So a 12-second delay without anything happening. And then the response to an eBay blocking the natural is chasing an SCV with a zealot that you build and getting 3 gateways before the Nexus. Now, if we compare this to the responses that we see at a high level, usually you pull 4 workers, and you take out the eBay at like 130, 135. You can just throw down a Nexus, and you'll have a single gateway that can produce units after. You don't have to build a zealot. Some people do build the zealot to try and put some pressure on, but generally it's not a great plan. Now, this Reaper is going to come in, kill a couple of workers, or at least I assume he's going to kill a couple of workers, because the Stalker, not only was the Cybercore delayed, but even taking into account that the Cybercore was delayed, this Stalker is still going to be almost, 30 seconds too late? Oh wait, there's already a Stalker out. I completely missed that. I was wondering how that happened. Why is this Stalker so late, I thought? Well, the Stalker was just chilling downstairs. Okay, so this Reaper just did this much damage for no real reason. Well, that makes things actually worse, but in some way it also makes me happy that his build order isn't that bad. Well, his build order still is really bad, but at least he got a faster Stalker. That does make me a little bit happy. So, finally, after about 2 minutes after the eBay got built, the eBay gets taken out as well. Cancel gets used on it, and now the Nexus can go down. An alternative approach, by the way, to this, if you don't want to pull workers, is that you can just build the Nexus on your 3rd base location. You will have to follow that up with Stargate afterwards, but it's a completely viable way to play. I was actually going to flame this Protoss player for building 3 gateways, because you can't really use them anyway, but he decided to go for a massive probe cut and not use any of his chrono boost, and as a result he could actually afford 3 units out of all of these gateways pre-warp gate. So he now has 6 units total. Once again, if we compare this to any actual build order, he still has less units than I would probably have with about 35 or 38 probes done at this point. Nonetheless, he hasn't really wasted any buildings yet. Very often, when something bad happens to lower level players, they'll panic and they start just doing things. They start adding random gateways. Maybe they add a quick forge, which they can't even afford over a 1 base economy. But here, it seemed that although the response was very bad, the response at least... there were no useless buildings. Everything that got built so far has been used. Well, I'd love to see this 4th gateway being used, but there's absolutely no way. You can't afford 3 gates off of 1 base while having to build probes, getting a robotics facility, and a forge at the same time. It's simply just not possible. And that's why we're seeing not a single warp-in being used in the past, minute or so, in the past 50 seconds. Actually, not a single warp gate has been used since warp gate has finished. These units were all built from gateways without warp gate. And I think to everyone now, this should be very obvious that this is obviously not optimal. It would be way better to produce less units from the warp gate. So let's just talk about this for a bit, because it's actually very important. As a Protoss player, you always want to get away with as little gateways as you can. Because a gateway is a building that doesn't really do anything for you except produce units. It's a waste of 150 minerals. If you want to hit a tight timing, the first thing you try to do is to cut as much of your production as possible, because if you can gain 150 minerals by cutting 1 warp gate, that would be fantastic. So something that Solari could have done here is, rather than getting 3 gates and producing, 3 units out of, or 4 units out of 1 gateway, and then another set of units out of these 2 gateways, he could have just produced 3 units out of 2 gateways total. That would have been better already, because in that case, the gateways wouldn't have been idle for so long. Another thing that he could have done is he could have used some of the chrono boost energy that he was saving to chrono boost the warp gate twice or 3 times, cutting off 30 seconds from the warp gate timing, and getting two units from each gateway as well, and then a warp in at the same timing where usually that 3rd unit would finish from these 2 final gateways. So what I'm trying to say is that Solari invested a lot in infrastructure that is useless for the goal that he's trying to achieve. And if you can get somewhere with less infrastructure, that tends to be more optimal. And especially this 4th gateway as well. I mean, this is never going to get used. And if it gets used, it is because we don't have constant production out of these gateways. What we often want when we optimize build orders is we want constant production out on our probes, constant production out of our gateways as well, and constant production out of our other production facilities, and possibly also the tech. So adding these 2 gateways, once again, doesn't do anything. So far, he's added 3 extra gateways without warping in a single unit. He's added a 2nd robotic facility, a robo bay, and a forge without producing any units. All of these gateways are useless. These 3 gateways, by themselves, present the same value as a faster 3rd base would have been able to represent. Actually, you save 50 minerals on that. And a faster 3rd base here would have been more useful. He might eventually use all 6 of these gateways, but it is not economically optimal to get this infrastructure as fast as possible. It's just not the way. Now, talking about this game a little bit, I think I missed a fight here, so I kind of want to look at that little fight again. All right, so this fight, there is a mine here, which shoots, kills the zealot. Then these marines take out the zealot as well. Not quite sure why he lifts this command center, but I guess he's afraid. And the tank shoots once and kind of forces this away. Honestly, not a terrible fight for the Protoss player. I mean, he lost 2 zealots, but also had 2 mules not working for a while. This should have been a worse fight if the tank was in a better position, but I still believe this honestly was kind of okay. I like the position of the Protoss player here, as he's up 11 workers, forcing out a turret as well here at the same time. So this actually looks good despite his failings so far. And that's because the Terran opener also wasn't absolutely brilliant. The Terran is a little bit afraid of holding his low ground as well. Stalker control is actually quite good. We see some single target fire on these Marines. 4 Stalkers, of course, take out a single Marine. Dush. Okay, so these were these the 2 tank shots? Okay, well, that's the 3rd tank shot. I like that he went in back one more time to make sure that it really was a tank shooting. Is this the fight that he was describing in his thing? He described a fight, 2 shots of a single tank kill my whole army. I mean, he lost 1 Stalker here. I doubt this was the fight, right? It really would surprise me. It really would surprise me this was the fight. Because this fight, honestly, you lost a Stalker, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, Raven's gonna make its way across the map. 3 more barracks on the way here for the Terran, who does have stim already, hasn't started combat shield, and is slightly supply blocked. Once again, I'd like to note that none of these extra gateways so far, these 3 haven't produced anything. These 3 haven't built a single unit from Warp Gate yet. We're still just stuck on the 3 Stalkers from earlier. And right now, without ever warping in any gateway units, our Protoss player decides it's time to throw down 3 more gateways on top of this. He could have triple expanded at this point, and his army size would have been exactly the same. Nothing would have changed in the army size, except he would have had a way better eco. So it really makes no sense. The way that he's playing, the way that he's adding production here is just really, really odd. It actually does make 0 sense. There's a double drop heading towards the main base. Now, this is the one scenario in which the extra infrastructure is actually useful. If you're getting dropped and you have 6 gateways, you don't have to move your units in position, but you can just warp in a big warp in. I guess he's gonna do both, move his units in position and do a big warp in. Kind of like that, dealing with this drop. Almost gets the medevac because the Terran controlled that a little bit sloppily. But does not quite end up getting it. Perhaps with these disruptors? No. Medevacs are going to fly away. So right now, all of these gateways have been used once. And if I recall correctly, Warp Gate finished at around the 4-minute mark. That means that every 4 minutes so far, on average, he's been doing a warp in. That is a very bad score, my friends. That actually is a very, very bad score. And the funny thing is that I'm afraid it's going to continue, because he seems very focused on getting more units out of these robotics facilities than anything else. Now, then here we have 2 cannons, which are in odd positions as well. I wouldn't mind if there was 1 cannon here and 1 cannon here, but right now this entire area is kind of that. Okay, there's another cannon here. It is expensive, but if you don't ever want to deal with multitasking, this might be the way forward. Drop is heading towards the 3rd base. At the same time, our Protoss player is actually attacking. Oh, I bet this is going to be the fight. This is, by the way, a very ill-informed timing attack, okay? I'd just like to point your attention, just direct your attention into the position that we're currently in and just show you guys what a terrible call this is, okay? So let's just get back. First of all, a lot of money is invested in infrastructure, which when you invest money into infrastructure, you are preparing for a further away future because infrastructure has no inherent value right at that moment, right? You can have 2 gateways and 10 units, or you can have 8 gateways and 1 unit. Well, it's obviously better for a timing attack to have the 10 units and the 2 gateways, but in the longer term, once your eco starts going, you'll need those extra gateways. So gateways are always an investment into the future, never in the direct moment. Second of all, there is a lot of investment in cannons here. This is what, 450 in the natural, or in the main, another 300 at the natural. We have another 300 at the 3rd base. So we have about, well, I can't count, but I think it adds up to about 1,050 or so minerals invested in static defense. This shows to me that the plan for Solari should be, with that investment in infrastructure and the investment in static defense, that it should be to remain defensive. That would make sense given the fact that he's up an entire base and up 20 workers. This push makes 0 sense. His opponent is about to all-in into him, is forced to all-in into him, and the fun thing is that Solari is actually well prepared. He has a lot of infrastructure, he has a lot of cannons as well. It's very unlikely that he will die. But because he's moving out, he gives his opponent here a chance to actually not only attack him at the 3rd base, but also drop some mines in the natural, have another little push over here. And while this is happening, we see this tank actually shelling out a decent amount of damage. Hello? He just start attacking his own eBay. This base gets lifted. Now, the moment your opponent lifts their natural, I think this is such a clear sign that perhaps it's time to go home and defend your 3 bases and your 20 worker lead. However, Solari here decides to walk up a ramp where there's 2 tanks in which he doesn't have vision. Oh, actually, there's 3 tanks. He doesn't have vision and loses his entire army. This was not a single tank shot. What did he... Okay, this was the fight he was talking about. 2 shots of a single tank, which cost only a bit more than a Stalker. First of all, a tank costs a crap ton more than a Stalker. It's really gas intensive. It's an annoying unit to build. It takes quite long. It's expensive. It's more supply than a Stalker. Well, obviously, it's not the same as a Stalker. So you could say that the Roach is a bit of a cheap Stalker, but a tank is a way more expensive unit. It just functions completely different. You can't really compare it. One's a siege unit, one is a very flexible attacking unit. Also has an anti-air attack, but whatever. Anyway, he attacks into 3 tanks, and he believed that this was a single tank. Now, honestly, if I walked into 3 tanks with my army, and I would lose my army, but I somehow live under the illusion that that was a single tank, I also would be extremely upset, because then I also would believe that the tank is overpowered. I mean, that tank... Holy crap, what is this? That tank just showcased the power of 3 tanks. So I understand why he's upset if he's this delusional. This was a very weird move as well, by the way. So the turret is a unit that runs out of time. So all you need to do is just wait, and eventually it will die. It makes no sense to send in units to kill it if you're going to lose units to kill it, because it will run out of time. Better is to just pull away your workers for a little bit, wait, he will shoot at the assimilator or the pylon, and you will be fine. What he did just here, losing 2 Stalkers, is kind of like challenging a 110-year-old for a duel. Like, sure, most likely you're a bit quicker with the revolver and you'll still win the duel, but there's really a lot of, still some risk involved, and it's probably better just to wait it out. I mean, they're 110. How long can it last? Raven's gonna move forward. Now, this is a case where you need to attack the turret in order to defend your 3rd base, so that's 100% the correct call. These Marines and Marauders get a little bit of damage, and the fun part is, well, the sad thing is in this game, despite Solari's biggest efforts to actually throw it, and him being down about, well, 3k in the unit loss tab, he still is actually ahead. I mean, he's up a base, similar upgrades, he has an extremely well-teched army, he's up in supply. If he just builds like 3 waves of probes and finally kills this mine, which has 11 kills, by the way. I didn't really pay attention to this yet because there were so many other bad things happening at the same time. Sometimes I have this. It's like some type of sensory overload, but with like really bad play. If there's too many bad plays happening at the same time, I can't see them all at once anymore, you know? It becomes too hard to analyze every single one. That's what happened here. Solari truly is pushing the limits of making every conceivable mistake. He's still ahead though. Like this is... The Terran has not been producing workers at all. Like that's really just the reason. I mean, the Protoss killed 6 workers and the Terran's only at 28. That's actually bad play out of the Terran. And it just isn't great. Double turrets once again going in. No defense for the turrets. Just pulls them away. Kind of like that. Good call. And then puts them back to mine. It actually was a very, very good response to the Raven, because the turrets can't chase you. It's a static unit that expires in a while. The sensor tower position is quite interesting as well. Now, after the last time's experience of going into a position blindly and remembering how poorly that went, Solari decided to live that same experience once again, loses both disruptors, gets a couple of shots on the sentries, like, maybe if I warp in 3 more Stalkers, I can try that same thing again. Not considering that perhaps one of the 2 observers currently trailing his army might be used as a spotting device to see if he can actually attack into the position. On top of that, it might also be wise to consider getting charged if you're playing against a lot of tanks. Zealots are quite good at tanking shots, and Stalkers don't necessarily trade super well against tanks. If your plan is to just move into positions the entire game, I would recommend the Charged Archon composition rather than a Stalker Colossi composition. With a Stalker Colossi composition, it tends to be more important to actually control your army because you don't want to be fighting, you just want to be abusing your range with the sentries and the stalkers. So far, what Solari has been doing is he made an army that wants to abuse the range, but rather than abusing the range, he just runs up there and then starts fighting. That's kind of like using a gun to knock someone out. Sure, it's still a pretty powerful weapon because it's quite heavy, but it would be a lot better if you use the range on it. And that's not what Solari has been doing so far. Still, I think two observers over here, beautiful with this army, making sure that he has zero vision on the map whatsoever. Nothing on the right side. Drops have been happening this entire game. No pylon, no unit over here, no unit over here, no pylon over here, no army, no observer at the army. A battlecruiser teleports across the map. The correct response against the battlecruiser never is to warp in 2 stalkers in a slow warping pylon. For the people that are not aware, actually, I know some of you don't play too much, but there's 2 types of pylons. You have the fast warping pylon and the slow warping pylon. If a pylon is in powering range of a nexus or a gateway, the warp-in takes only 3 seconds. If the pylon is not in warping range of a gateway or a nexus, the warping of the stalker takes about, I believe, 7 or 8 seconds. It's a really long time. It feels like 3 years. So I'd always recommend warping in close to a nexus or a gateway. So all of these pylons would have been fine. However, he warped into near a pylon that wasn't close by a nexus, and thus the pylon actually got taken out before the stalkers even could finish warping. I love that the response out of Solari, no matter what happens, just seems to be to attack. Oh, there's a single battlecruiser in my base. That probably means the best move here to do is to attack into the same tank line that I attacked into earlier. I really do believe this is an almost unlosable game. So, hello, could we use the Guardian Shield perhaps? But Solari is honestly just trying his best to lose it. Colossi also target firing the Thor is a sight to behold. Good disruptor shot though. Rather than going for units that actually take extra damage from the Colossi, like the Marines or the SCVs. Okay, this is the first time in the game where I'm actually scared for Solari. He took such a bad fight that he's currently down 6k. This battlecruiser managed to kill a bunch of crap as well, which is hard to imagine as a single battlecruiser loses, I think, against like 5 or 6 stalkers, which, let's not forget, he could have warped in that amount of stalkers while being on 1.5 base mining. Turret comes in once again. Workers get pulled. Well, not quite, but almost good enough. Almost good enough. This Terran has a playstyle as well, by the way. This is the type of stuff I don't really see anymore at my level, but a planetary at the 3rd. I hadn't even noticed that yet. 2 Marauders in the bunker. Sensor tower placement. Sometimes I just miss playing on like slightly lower level games, you know? It just seems like these people have way more fun. They can kind of do whatever you want, and against people like Solari it might even work. Alright, so the Terran is actually up in income right now. Ever so slightly. Worker count is very close. Solari, by the way, has been on 46 workers for the past 35 minutes as well. So, did he just build a Phoenix to deal with this Raven? You know what? I don't even mind it. I was gonna make fun of him for that, but I don't even really care. If you hate playing against a Raven, then getting a Phoenix is completely fine. I said what I said. Yeah, snipe it. I don't give a crap. Perfect, that was good. Now, there's another thing that where Protoss has a huge advantage over the other races. And that is that Protoss... He's actually gonna build a bunker. Is that Protoss has a very good gas sink in the Templar archives with the High Templar. Because the Archon is such a powerful unit, if you're floating a lot of gas, you just throw down a Templar archives, warp in like 10 Templar, and boom, you're rid of your gas bank, and at the same time you just created an insanely powerful army with 5 Archons. I still believe that the way for Solari to play in the future is to just get charge and Archons, because the way he controls his army, or well, I wouldn't exactly call it controlling, he just A-moves into a position, and sometimes it even is a move command. He just kind of move commands into a position. Charge-Lot Archon is way more suited for that than Stalker, Immortal, Sentry is. So, if I were to give you one piece of advice that really needs to stick, it is to try to not build units that require any type of control. You know, sometimes you just have to admit your weaknesses, and your weakness seems to be that you can't control units, and that you make really bad decisions. So ideally, also, you wouldn't make decisions anymore. But yeah, that might be a little bit hard to play then. But yeah, maybe you get like a friend over or something that just tells you what to do. Or, well, this actually might be an okay-ish fight for Solari here. Still would have loved to see a Guardian Shield here. Once again, Zealots would be so useful against the tanks. Also at tanking Marauder shots, by the way. Don't forget that Stalkers are armored, so take extra damage from these Marauders. Which means that having a couple of Zealots to tank is always very helpful. Yeah, maybe you should just pre-record, you know, at certain points in the game. There, every minute or so, there's a pre-recording of you going, don't attack if you're up 2 bases. If your opponent builds 30 tanks and sits them on top of his main ramp, don't walk into it. You know, and then you just play that with like general pieces of advice. And after every single game, you can just add something, you know? If you make another silly mistake, you just ask one of your friends what your mistakes was, and then boom, they'll tell you, and then you record that as well. I actually give you a free sample at the end of a couple that might be useful for you. Don't worry, I'll get the base ones covered. Nice Stalker warp in. I like that once again, 2 extra gateways were being added somewhere. Yeah, here. So right now we're up to 10 gateways, I guess? Yeah, 10 gateways is going to be the answer. Beautiful stuff, really. Especially because he tends to just use them once every 2 minutes. And he's been lacking money for the past 5 minutes as well. So it's really not that wise of an investment, but honestly, I guess at lower levels I'd rather have too much infrastructure rather than too little infrastructure. And 10 gates of a 4 base, well, 52 workers. It is very low eco. It really is quite low eco. Okay, here we go again. Let's do the Solari checklist. No vision of our opponent. Check. An army that consists of units that function very well in a longer lasting engagement with, you know, kind of dancing back and forth. Check. Absolutely no clue of the siege position. Check. Let's move command in, boys. We're ready. I'm wondering if he's actually gonna go or not. Oh, yes, of course. If there's one thing... Ooh, that was a good disruptor shot. Holy crap. Is this fight actually gonna win? No, it's not. Oh! Oh! Yeah, the anti-armor missile is really, really big against Battlecruisers as well. Because they attack so darn fast. Oh, actually, kind of... It's a semi-winning fight. If there was a prism with this army, I think it might have been... like a 10 Stalker warp in him would have really been huge. I really would not have minded that. Did that Battlecruiser just teleport across the map? Oh, yes, it did. Okay, so we have money ready. I do believe we have warp gates ready as well. I wouldn't mind a warp in of some Stalkers here. There we go. Dealing with that BC. How many BCs have died so far, by the way? 2? 3. Worker kills of 50 as well, total. And this Terran is a harassing god. Parks it over here again. This is a legendary position already, in my opinion. Terran moves out with 2 Vikings. No medevacs whatsoever. Going in for some harass. Look at these tank positions as well. I guess this is really cool. Is that if you just build tanks and planetaries everywhere, people like Solari will consistently walk into it. And although you never should win fights, you do kind of keep winning them. Solari's still down 4k. But at this point, the Terran really is outmining his opponent. So not only does Solari need to start mining more, but Solari also needs to take winning engagements. And that's honestly the part I'm most afraid of. Still, by the way, absolutely zero vision on the map. Nothing over here, nothing over here. He's just gambling where his opponent's gonna be. He also has an entire army parked against a single battlecruiser. This is the type of multitasking that I love to see. And now this BC actually teleports out. That was great. That's a great little interaction there. Now, if I were to predict what Solari is about to do next, every single time where he wasn't quite sure what was happening, he usually moves out, or if he's not in position for something. So I think that after he kills this bio army, because the bio army revealed itself, he's just going to straight move across the map. I don't think there's any other solution here. Ooh, nice. Couple of mine shots. Very cool. Yeah, he's just going to chase this. He's a simple man. He has the go mode and the no-go mode. Oh, and now the battlecruiser as well in this base. And now... Ooh. Actually warps in Stalker. Well, not sure if that's going to be good enough. Blink! Blink! Wanted to blink to dodge it. Actually, good defense. I really did like this defense. Well, it wasn't brilliant, but it was pretty good. A good trick, by the way, in general, if you're dealing with Battlecruiser harass, is to get a battery per mineral line. This forces the Battlecruiser to initially start shooting the battery before they can start attacking anything else. And also, if you warp something in and the battery is still alive, whatever you warped in is going to win the fight. So against Battlecruiser harass, actually getting a battery per base is it's just an extremely useful tool. And it's a lot more useful than cannons. Because even though cannons, they deal damage and batteries do not, batteries keep everything alive. And they ensure that you have a higher eco. Okay, once again, I think we finished up the Solari checklist here. No vision whatsoever, not being aware of the siege line, and just aim moving into his opponent's army. I think all of these kind of get checked. Honestly, the disruptor control has been good out of Solari. This is the one thing I have to admit, which is absolutely mind-blowing, because you actually have to select the Purification Nova and control it to click it on a unit. And he hasn't been capable of clicking on any units with the rest of his army. So it just is kind of surprising to me. Obviously, this once again was a terrible fight, as Solari right now is down, well, about 9,000 resources. Impressive. Very, very impressive. Battlecruiser once again gets teleported. Oh my god, this guy has 33 kills. How did this guy get 33 kills? Was this the guy from earlier that went into nothingness? I guess so, huh? I can't believe that the BC harass is what did him in. I also can't believe that the only starport is a tech-lagged starport that has been building BCs consistently, which means there's like a negative amount of medevacs. Yeah, there's literally 2 medevacs right now. It's actually a crazy low amount. Now, at this point, the game is extremely over. And there's 17 workers remaining. There's a single worker mining at this base. And now he decides to build a battery to defend these 3 workers. Rather than when there was 35 workers mining there. Very cool. Very, very cool. BC gets teleported into a base where there's nothing there. That obviously is a mistake. I think this BC might actually die. I know this BC will die. Holy crap. Stalkers with +3 deal so well with it. It's actually crazy. That's really, really cool to see. I'm a huge fan of that. Well, it doesn't really matter because Solari is completely dead. Sadly for Solari, he's rather unaware of that because he has no vision of his opponents, preferring to keep all 3 observers with his main army at all times to make sure that if he loses 2 observers, that there still will be 1 to provide detection against Widow Mines. Because that really has been the issue this game, of course. The Widow Mines. Not the fact that he kept walking into siege lines. Now, once again, L green is going to go for a little drop. We might even see some real multitasking here. This drop will hit, and at the same time maybe attack this base. Very, very cool. Hop, stims, almost at the same time. Ooh, there even is a move over here. Solari doesn't know what's happening. Boom. Multi-prong, baby. Now, there's 2 things here that Solari can do. 1, he could leave. 2, he could move across the map. Oh. Goes for the first one. Leaves without a GG as well, of course, because this wasn't a good game. Stupid siege tanks. Now, I want to go over this complaint form one more time. He said, first of all, I gotta say that I suck. I know that. Well, I'm glad you already know, so I don't have to tell you that again. But I think everything else in this little form actually was incorrect. The 2 shots of a single tank obviously wasn't true. It was 3 tanks that shot you like 5 times. Like, there's a difference between 2 shots total and 15 shots total. And if you don't recognize that, I honestly have a very difficult time seeing how you will improve in the future. When I focus on the tank, the Marines/Marauders kill my whole army in 2 seconds. Okay, this actually never happened. First of all, you never really focused on the tank. And also, if you have an army that gets hard countered by tanks, like Stalker Colossi kind of does get hard countered, you can either do 2 things. 1, you can move around the tanks and try and pull your opponent out of position, keep map control, and then just kind of poke into different bases, forcing the Terran to reposition the tanks. Then once the tanks are unsieged, you can go in. Sadly, this requires vision, which is honestly one of the things that you really did lack. Your vision this game was absolutely terrible. And I'm not even just talking about map vision. Like, you had no pylons on the map, no units on the map, no observers in good locations, but also the vision in front of your army for when you want to attack into a position was just god-awful. Not a single time did you have any clue whatsoever what your opponent was doing. None. You just did not understand what was going on. A single time. Really, not even once. And that is a huge issue. That actually is a huge issue. If you use an army like Stalker Colossi, you can't do that. This is why, first of all, absolute terrible vision. And this is also why I suggest to you to play Charizard Archon Immortal from now on out. Just, it's an army that A, moves easily. You don't need as much vision. They kind of do the work themselves. Sure, it's a weaker composition in certain situations. But for you, I think it's always going to be the better call. 2, your decision making. Your decision making in this game was really, really terrible. And a lot of that comes from a complete lack of scouting, knowing what's going on. But also, it seems like you're incapable of basic logic, which is painful to say. You're up 2 bases, as you state in the forum. You attack into someone that is down 20 workers while you're investing a lot into the late game. This makes absolutely 0 sense to me. And the funny thing is that you even realize these things, but then you don't realize the mistake that perhaps attacking into your opponent as they're all-inning you isn't the correct call. So, yeah, for that also, insufficient points. Not very well done. For the actual build order and the opening, well, it seems obvious you don't have a build order. You don't really know any regular responses to pretty basic variations like an eBay block. The logic of the infrastructure that you throw down, well, is very difficult to see. At least I can't find any logic in it. It just, the entire game just doesn't make a lot of sense. You have one redeeming quality, and that is that you spend your money quite well. Like really, legitimately, I think your macro skills, your mechanics seem to be quite good, and that's what keeps you in the games. Your pro production is a little bit lacking, but that's the one thing I'd say, good job for your level. It's obvious to me, however, that it's not Terran that is imbalanced. It is not the siege tank that costs as much as a Stalker. No, my friend, it is you who sucks. Yes, you do. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thanks all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and before I forget, here are the 3 voice lines you can use next time you're laddering. So the first one will be, are we up 2 bases and 60 probes? If the answer is yes, just stay at home and don't do anything. That was 1. 2. Are we about to engage into a position and we have no knowledge of what is in this position? Try to get some knowledge of what is behind the first 2 units. Are there siege tanks behind it? Are there perhaps lurkers? Are there disruptors in the back? Figure it out. All right. Number 3. If we are not going to be producing from our gateways for the next 6 minutes, we don't have to add more gateways. We can use the gateways that we already have. All right. I hope this helps. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and bye-bye.